If you've heard of him, let me give you a short introduction of him. So Richie Norton is a award-winning author of #1 best-selling book, The Power of Starting Something Stupid, translated in more than 10 languages, and Résumés Are Dead, and What to Do About It. He is an international speaker, including TEDx Google Startup Grind, and serial entrepreneur. Richie is the founder of Global Consulting Circle, creating scaling business models for venture-backed startups and strategy for private equity entry and exits. He is the co-founder of Product, helping entrepreneurs turn ideas into profitable products with global sourcing or an end-to-end supply chain. Norton founded Edit Today, a multinational video editing service for vloggers. Millions of entrepreneurial-minded people study Norton's work and blended learning, modular educational programs, self-directed learning online courses, masterminds, conferences, workshops, articles, keynotes, videos, interviews, books, mentoring, university lectures. Executives and celebrities alike seek out Richie to create new value-based products experience for their audiences. Richie is featured in Forbes, Business Week, Entrepreneur, HuffPo, Inc., etc. The 2013 San Francisco Book Festival awarded The Power of Starting Something Stupid first in business and grand prize winner overall. At age 29, Pacific Business News recognized Richie as one of the top 40 under 40 best and brightest young businessmen in Hawaii. Richie founded a mentor capital organization to help end poverty and established the Mark and Laura Willie Center for International Entrepreneurship, where he serves on the Mentor Venture Capital Board at BYU Hawaii. Richie is published in the Journal of Microfinance and is a Change Aid Award winner for outstanding accomplishment in international development, international relations, humanitarian aid, and academic achievement. Richie received his MBA from the world's #1 ranked international business school, Thunderbird School of Global Management. Richie is happily married, has 4 boys, and lives on the North Shore of Oahu, Hawaii. And now I give you Richie Norton.
Thank you. Thanks so much. How about a round of applause for everyone that put this event together? Because, hello, amazing. I'm really grateful to be here, and I've just been listening and learning, and I've been inspired, and it's been incredible. I hope that whatever you've learned here, you take back with you and do something awesome with it, because that's why we're here. Let me share with you some principles to help you live a happy and better life, just not in life, but also in business. I want to show you a couple things. That's my beautiful bride. Her name is Natalie. So I grew up in San Diego, California, served a mission in Brazil, and in the States there's a program called EFY. Anybody familiar with EFY, especially for youth? So we were EFY counselors. That's how we met. And within 2 months of meeting each other, we were married. So we're crazy people. And yes. And then she had been at BYU Hawaii, and me too, but we didn't know each other. When I was there, she was in Ecuador doing some service work. And, when she was there, I was on my mission. So we hit it off, and we had a dream. When I was in Brazil, I dreamed that I could start businesses that could help people climb out of poverty, because it was hard for us to get priesthood holders to go to church because they had to work on Sundays. It is what it is. And so I thought, is there a way to help people work their way out of poverty so they can go to church on Sunday? That was the question I asked myself. And then I thought, that's something you do when you're rich and old and retired. Because that's what you do when you're rich and old and retired. You go and you give back. And I said, I'm not going to wait 40 years to do what I want to do. If I'm 25 and I wait, see, in America there's a thing called retirement, and it's at 65. And so most people wait 40 years to do what they actually really want to do. And it's a huge waste of time, and a huge waste of resources, and a huge waste of opportunities. And so I thought, how can I help people now without waiting until I'm 65 to do these things, even in my own poverty, even without knowing what I'm doing? So I'm going to share with you how I did that, how I'm still trying to do that, and how you can make your own ideas and dreams come true, especially those that serve others. So I wrote this business plan at BYU Hawaii, because I was student body president, and I had learned that a lot of students weren't going back to their home countries, but there one that was, and her name was Ariuna. My Mongolian friends know who she is. She might look different. This is like 15 or 16 years ago, right? But it started with an idea on my mission. And I know that you have ideas in your mind right now that you haven't done anything about because you don't think you have enough time, education, experience, or money. And you need to remember, no one, when they start, has enough time, enough education, enough experience, enough money. That's why we find mentors and people that help us. In fact, those that do wait to retirement, because I've worked in the financial industry for a while, those who do wait to retirement to do what they really want to do, suddenly find out that they waited all that time only to learn that they still need more time, more education, more experience, and more money. But the ones that were most successful started anyways, earlier. And even if they messed up and it failed, they learned, oh, I guess that wasn't for me. Glad I learned that now instead of 40 years from now when it would have crushed me. So I would say, this is going to be the theme of my talk today. Start whatever idea is pressing on your mind immediately and watch the magic happen. As you tell people about your idea, don't hide it, and people come out and shake and say, that's a good idea, you should talk to so-and-so. I can help you, want a partner. This is what happens when you share your ideas. If you don't share your ideas, they just don't happen. So here's some of my kids, Raleigh, Cardin, and Lincoln. It's kind of an older picture. So we went to Hawaii, started having children immediately. And we also had my brother-in-law who lived on and off with us for about 5 years. And his name was Gavin. And Gavin was a really soft soul, really kind of hardcore, cool guy, but had a tender spirit. And he had lots of weird things going on in his life, but he figured it out. He was the kind of guy that would bring homeless people to church just because he wanted to. And he would go on trips to Cambodia to build houses. Well, one day out of nowhere, at the ripe old age of 21, he passed away in his sleep. He died in his sleep completely unexpectedly. In fact, even today we don't know why he passed away. And the doctors say it must have been natural causes. Like we still don't know. But this shook me so hard because it sunk in that life really is short. And even though that saying is cliche, life is short, it doesn't make it any less true. It's just short. And I realized, even for my brother-in-law Gavin, at the age of 21, all those dreams and ideas and thoughts that he had, whether he was doing them right then or he was going to do them when he retired later or whatever, died with him. But his story and his ability to serve others inspired me. A few short years later, we had our fourth son, and we named him Gavin, after my brother-in-law. And Gavin kind of filled the hole that Uncle Gavin left. One day, Gavin started coughing, and it wasn't much. And we took him to the doctors, and they said it's nothing, and it continued. And we took him to the doctors, and they said it's nothing, and it continued. So we took him to the doctors, and they said it's RSV, which is just the name of a certain kind of cough. Okay. And one night it actually got really bad. And so we rushed to the hospital, and it turned out they didn't know what he had either. And we thought we would be in and out of there like they normally said, oh, it's nothing, just go away, you silly parents. But they didn't. And over time, it turned out that he had caught a communicable disease called pertussis, also known as whooping cough. If you don't know those words, it's okay. It's just a really bad cough. Okay? But it was so much on his little body. And I remember there was a night when a nurse came in and she said, you need to stay the night. And you have to remember, we always stayed the night. That wasn't a thing. She was cluing us in that he might not make it. And they brought in a crash cart, which is a machine that will try and keep you alive. And the doctor pulled us aside and said, look, your baby's gonna die. By law, we have to try and revive the baby with this machine, but it's just going to be a violent process and he will die. So like as a parent, it's like your worst nightmare, right? So I turned to my wife and we were trying to decide, well, what are we going to do? Because we actually had a choice. Do we let him cough and die? Or do we take out all those plugs on him and hold him and rock him until he dies? And I remember death is a hard thing for anyone, and it's hard when it's your own child. But death statistically ruins people, especially marriages. And he's laying in the middle on his little bed, and he's all puffed up with fluids and wires. And I'm on one side, my wife's on the other, and we're just holding hands, just crying. And we pray. And we promise to each other and to our Heavenly Father that we wouldn't let his death destroy us, but that we would somehow turn this tragedy into a triumph, that somehow we would live better because of him. And it was the most horrible thing I've ever experienced. And they took out all the wires, and my wife, and I rocked him for a second, handed him to my wife, and she rocked him while I put my hand on his little heart, and he slipped away. And as horrible as that sounds, what my wife shared with me later was very interesting. She said that she felt like there was another her, a her stronger than herself, an authentic person, a her that was inside, that was able to help her get through that situation. And there is a stronger, better you inside of all of you, no matter what you're going through, or what you've gone through, or what you definitely will go through. And what you don't think about is after a child dies, or I guess anyone dies in the hospital, you have to leave. You don't just stay there. And so my wife's holding it's horrible to say, but our dead child, and she's like, I can't leave. Like, what am I supposed to do? You don't just set it down and leave. And so it was amazing, miraculous. A nurse came in, just a young nurse, and she said, can I rock your baby? And my wife handed the baby to the nurse, rocked the baby, and we left the hospital empty-handed. And the world never felt heavier, ironically. And it destroyed us. It hurt a lot. And he's buried in Laie, right there by Laie Park, if you've been there, by the school, BYU Hawaii. And he's actually buried on top of his uncle. They're just snuggling in the sand there. And I actually later That's where they're at. I met with someone named Sherry Dew. Does anybody know Sherry Dew? She's a CEO of Deseret Book, or at least she was, whatever she's doing now. I used to put on conferences, and she would come and speak. And she said to me and my wife, she said this. She said, "What'd you learn to my wife, to your brother, for your brother and your son to die?" And my wife said, ask me in a year. I don't know. And I want to share with you what we learned. Because it doesn't necessarily have to be a death to learn these principles. But it sure does help to learn that life is urgent and important. And that those ideas I was talking about that may be weighing on your mind might not just be some stupid idea. It might be the Spirit telling you something to do. As you search the scriptures and think of all the crazy things people did in the scriptures, a lot of times they didn't want to do those things. They were stupid ideas. But it's what the Lord wanted them to do because his ways are higher. So I call it Gavin's Law. If you were to write anything down, you should write this down. And Gavin's Law is this: live to start, start to live. Because if you live to start those ideas that are pressing on your mind, you really will start living. Think about it this way. There are people all around the world walking around not knowing why they're here, where they're going, and even if they do have ideas pressing on their mind, they don't do them, and they're sad and depressed. But if they did act on those ideas that are inspiring them, even if they're scared of them, things simply change. So when my brother-in-law died, when my son died, and I learned how short life is, I learned I need to live to start those ideas that are pressing on my mind, because when I do, I really will start living. And that's what I've noticed with my clients too, my entrepreneurial clients. Anyone who wants to start a new project, there's an idea weighing on their mind and they start it, things change. I'm going to share, but I want you to ask you another question. Just think to yourself, what is the thought that has been on your mind that you haven't done anything with yet? And I would consider figuring out a way into starting now. And the way to start is simple. You just tell somebody. That's the first thing. And they'll say, "That's cool." And then you tell someone else, and they'll point you into the right direction. But if you keep it in your mind, it dies with you. And if you wait till you're retired to do what you want to do, think about it this way. When I said I was 25, and I had the thought, do I wait till I'm 65 to do this work that I'm doing now? Let's assume that it's, because I'm heavily involved in the social entrepreneurial space where we help people work their way out of poverty. And if you think about it this way, if someone's 25 and they wait till they're 35, 45, 55, 65, that is 2 generations of people. 2 generations. So you actually missed an opportunity to help 3 generations. The generation today, their children, and their grandchildren. And then you start, and you've not had the opportunity to affect an entire family tree of 3 generations. That's why it's so important to act now, because it's not about you, is it? It's not about you. Whatever the Spirit tells you. So I wanted to talk to you about stupid. You saw that my book, it was called The Power of Starting Something Stupid. So you need to understand the context of this, okay? Creativity starts at stupid. If it wasn't stupid, if it had already been done, it's just not creative. Creativity is always outside of the norm. It's always different. It's always an anomaly. Otherwise, it's not creative. It's smart. It's already been done. The biggest opportunities in innovation always happen outside of what's currently happening. Okay? So let me give you some examples. Twitter. BizStone's engineers, the founder of Twitter, they told me it was a stupid idea and they shouldn't start it. This is a weird one. Spanx. women's hosiery. She basically said, we're going to cut off the feet of these things and we're going to make this. You understand that she's the first female billionaire, self-made billionaire in the world with Spanx. And when she did it, she went to so many organizations, factories, even lawyers. And I remember reading her biography here. One of the lawyers said, "Are we on Candid Camera?" That's one of those shows where they have a secret camera and they wonder if this is a real thing. That was how stupid her idea was. You understand, eBay was a stupid idea. Nobody thought you could trust buying and selling things online. The telephone was a stupid idea. Alexander Graham Bell's father-in-law said, it's just a toy. And then he had to prove his father-in-law wrong, right? Maybe that's what helped him. They said that no one would look at a wooden box all day long in their room. The television. The computer was also a stupid idea. Why would anyone need a personal computer? There used to be these huge multi-million-dollar machines that would fill this whole room up. No one understood what was happening. These are all stupid ideas that have actually, we couldn't even imagine surviving without these things. They're essentials. So here's the model. A stupid idea becomes smart. All the smart, when someone all of a sudden realizes that this is a smart idea, that's when everyone rushes in. That's why people don't like seed funding. It's very scary. But as soon as they got some revenue, boom, everybody jumps in. Smart idea. But then what happens is everyone starts copying because they steal the idea and it becomes standard. And at that point, you have to go back to stupid. And if you don't, you actually lose the game because there's too much competition. And you understand the least competition is always in the white spaces. The least competition is always at the top. Let me give you an example. So I went to New York. It was my first time ever going. I flew from Hawaii to New York to meet with a marketer named Seth Godin, who's #1 business blogger in the world. And he was going to show me how to market my book. And while I was there, I decided, I'm all by myself. I got nothing to do. I'm going to go see the sights. So I went to the Empire State Building. Has anybody ever heard of the Empire State Building? Okay. I thought you could just go in it. I didn't know it was like a tourist trap. So when you get there, they actually make you pay. And there's two choices. You can go to, I think it's the 82nd floor, something like that, for one fee, or you can go to the 102nd floor, which is the top, for like 10 or 20 bucks more. And I thought, well, if I'm already here and I've come so far, I'm gonna pay a little bit more to go to the tippy top. And on the 82nd floor, there were so many people that you have to take your cell phone and to take a picture, you have to go like this. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, every day in Hong Kong, I know. You're right. Right. But on the tippy top, there was no one in there. I think I was in there alone for some time. The highest part, it was a smaller area. A couple people came in and out. I was the only one there. And as I got on and I could see everything, and I'm higher. And as I'm coming down the elevator, there's a little chime comes on, and it's like an old-fashioned voice, and it says, "You are now part of the 102 floor club," something like that, 102nd club, something bizarre. But when I looked back on the experience, I learned it's such a metaphor for life. Even though it might cost a little more to go higher, a little more effort, a little more energy, a little more excitement, a little more investment, a little more work, even though it costs a little more, you understand there is no competition up there. People are always scared, I can't be the best because it's so hard to get there. Little do they know that those that have made it to the top are laughing because it's actually way easier up there. There's no one else with their cell phones in the way. Everyone in this room should be shooting for the top. Does that make sense? Henry Ford, at one point in time, over 50% of the cars in the world were Model Ts, okay? And there's a joke that says every car, it could be any color as long as it was black. He was king. He was king. But here's what happened. new businesses started coming in, like General Motors. And he went on vacation, and his employees, this is a true story, his employees made him a new car, a new model, a new whatever. And when he came back from vacation, he saw it, and what do you think he did? You would assume he'd be excited like it's his birthday. No. He jumped on top of the car, smashed the windshield in, and ripped off the handle from the door. We don't make any other cars. This is what we make. So GM took a different approach, and GM started to take tons of Ford's market share. They use something called, this is a big word, planned obsolescence. They always planned that they would be irrelevant. They always planned they would be worthless. Every car would be worthless. So they started making cars in different colors, different models, started taking so much of Ford's shares that Ford had to shut down for months and reinvent themselves, and that's when they returned to stupid and they created the Model A. And then things started to even out. This is the process of our lives. A lot of you, I'm assuming, might know of or use LinkedIn. The founder of LinkedIn, Reid Hoffman, he calls this process living in beta. So when you start a new business and you first start trying it out, there's an alpha, there's a beta, when you start testing it with people. He says your life is always in beta. I don't know what the statistics are in your countries, but in America, people only stay in jobs for an average of 4.6 years. That is the average. So some stay longer, some stay less. Whether they want to or not, that is the average in America. And it might be more here or less here, I don't know in your countries, but I will tell you this. With one thought, your employer could say, we don't need you anymore. With just a thought, and you're gone. It's very hard for employers to get good employees. It's even harder for employees to get good employers. Very difficult. Okay? So that said, you always need to be reinventing yourself. Reinventing yourself looks like this: showing up and learning new things, trying new things. And if you have an idea, if you're not entrepreneurial, just call it a project, or even a project within your company. We might even call that intrapreneurial, where you do it inside your own company. Okay? So there it is. Stupid becomes smart, smart becomes standard becomes stupid. Stupid becomes success, success is stolen, and then it becomes stagnant, and that's where corporate suicide happens. You literally kill yourself if you don't return to reinvent yourself, which I call stupid. Others might call this innovation. I just like to use weird words. Okay? So, you ever heard of these companies? You've heard of them, right? Watch this. This guy, Ben Horowitz, he is the founder of the venture capital firm that invested in every single one of those businesses. And I wish I had this quote before I wrote my book, so I could have included it. But I think he said it after, or at least I didn't see it until after. He said, by definition, a breakthrough looks like a stupid idea. So when you're trying to come up with like new things and trying to come up with new ideas, go for the weird ones. Of course, you don't have to go and do it and take this big risk and spend all this money. If you're in part of our other lectures earlier, you just survey people, ask them what they want, give them what they want. If it doesn't work out, do another one. You don't have to spend a lot of time, money, experience, or education in starting a new venture. You just have to start. The experience happens in the doing. Let me share a quote with you from President Monson. He was actually, I've gone through so many of his talks on purpose, just looking for things, and he was, of all the prophets, extremely hard on the idea of live now, live now, live now, live now. Not living in the past, not living in the future, living in the present. Look what he said. I'm going to read you. This is a quote from a talk of his in October 2008 called Finding Joy in the Journey. And it says, time never stands still. And then he says, It must steadily march on, and with the marching comes the changes. Listen you gotta listen closely, this is so good. This is our one and only chance at mortal life, here and now. The longer we live, the greater is our realization that it's brief. Opportunities come, and then they're gone. I believe that among the greatest lessons, look at a prophet, years and years, so much experience. Of all the things he could say, one of the greatest lessons we are to learn in this short sojourn, which is like a journey upon the earth, are lessons that help us distinguish between what is important and what is not. So when you are doing your daily activities, whether it's at work or something else, think, is this actually important or is it not important? Am I being distracted by being busy, or am I actually being productive? And then you will notice, using the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, you will notice that 20% of what you do actually gets results, and the other 80%, you're kind of wasting a lot of time. And when you can identify the 20%, then you actually have 80% more time to do bigger and better, more important things. That's why somebody in here, I forget, the guy that sells noodles, what was his name? Charles. He said he makes his employees go home at 5:30, 8:30 to 5:30. I said, I like to think that way too. It's actually incredibly genius. It's the procrastinators that stay late because they didn't get anything done and they want to impress their boss. When they could have actually gotten way more done using Parkinson's law, which is the amount of time given, the amount of time allotted, is how long it takes to get the job done. Have you ever done a paper and got it done overnight? Or you have a talk you have to give and you get it done in 5 minutes before? That's because that's how long it actually takes. You just procrastinated. Does that make sense? So here he says, I believe that the greatest lessons we are to learn in this short, here's what I wanted to say. I plead with you not to let those most important things pass you by as you plan for that elusive, which means not real, and non-existent future when you will have time to do all that you want to do. Instead, find joy in the journey now. What would be a time in the distant future that you think you'll have time to do all that you want to do? Well, when I finally go to school, when I finally graduate from school, when I finally get married, when I finally buy a house, when I finally sell the house or pay off the mortgage, when I finally retire. These are all things that actually stop us from living. Because all those ideas you had in your mind, you should be doing right now, not waiting for something else to happen. Because that takes it out of your control. You want to take 100% responsibility for your life. Okay? Some quotes. Steve Jobs, stay hungry, stay foolish. He's actually quoting something else, by the way. So what I want you to understand is stupid is the new smart. In fact, stupid is the smart hack. It is the way engineers and inventors and innovators make stuff up. They assume that the current status quo is wrong or something could be improved upon. So they go into the stupid zone and they create something smarter. It is the fastest way to get smarter. So I wrote this book, The Power of Starting Something Stupid. It's in like 10 languages. I thought I'd throw a couple pictures of it here. It's in Chinese. It's that simplified, and I don't know what they are. Honestly, can't read this, Not something I know how to do. There's Japanese. There's Korean. Okay? There's more. But through this process of writing books, I learned that words actually have power. Because I get hundreds of emails every day of people asking me questions or telling me how they quit their job, got a job, started a new business. And because I started this idea to write a book when I was like super young and I didn't know what I was doing, even though I did it anyways, started a consultancy for me. It started a sourcing company for me. It started an online school for entrepreneurs for me. One thing leads to another. You don't know where it's going to go. In fact, if you try to plan your life all the way out, you're going to be very disappointed when you realize that none of it actually happened. So you do what you have with what you have right now. You do what with what you have right now where you are. There's not something more that you need. That's a lie that we tell ourselves, which makes us lose out on massive opportunities. So why aren't more people starting the status quo, changing the status quo? Is because they're afraid of looking stupid. We're intentionally, we are very scared of looking like an other, of looking different, of being in the corner, of being shamed, of having people point their finger at us. But over and over and over, every business, every leader, including the Savior, you look at what they did. Every person in the scriptures, Moses is gonna like open the, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is crazy stuff. Every person that leads looks crazy. And many of the people, business people I talked to here, when they said, how did you start this? They go, you know what? I didn't know if it was gonna work. People said I was crazy. Yep. So what's the idea that's pressing on your mind? I hope you write that down and I hope you do it. No time, no education, no money is no excuse. So I'm trained by the Coveys, 7 Habit people. Stephen Covey was at my wedding, amazing guy. My father-in-law worked with him. My wife grew up knowing his family. Stephen M.R. Covey, after my brother-in-law passed away, asked me to come to his office. He wrote a book called The Speed of Trust. And I was 26 at the time, I think, yeah. And he said, Richie, I want you to do Speed of Trust, is a book they had. So I want you to do Speed of Trust trainings for us, for corporations, for executives, for CEO. And I looked at him like super confused. And this is exactly what I said. I pointed to my hair. I said, what about the gray hairs? That's what I said. Because how are they going to take me seriously as this little kid? And he banged on the table. Not like mean, but just like serious. He goes, Richie, people say they have 20 years experience, when in reality, they only have 1 year's experience repeated 20 times. I'm going to say that one more time slower. People say they have 20 years experience, when in reality, they only have 1 year's experience repeated 20 times. Obviously, that's not true for everyone. But for people that don't reinvent themselves, people that don't believe in continuous improvement, they're doing the same thing they did last year. And the same thing last year was what they did the year before. And they go, I got 20 years experience. And you're like, how come I know so much more than you? Like, what's going on? Like, it's 20 years is a long time. Like, there's something called the internet now, right? You know what I mean? So don't let your youth ever stop you. And also don't let being older stop you. You can always learn. It's when you stop learning that you fail. It's as simple as that. That whole stupid loop, you could also call it just reinventing yourself and learning something new over and over and over. So after I got my MBA at Thunderbird, went on this big speaking tour, my wife met this family. And they, it was a mom, single mom, and she had 3 kids. A 7-year-old girl and 1-year-old twins. And the mom asked if we could help because she has to work at night. And we said, yeah. We didn't know them at all, like first time meeting. We brought these children into our home, and the mom, to keep the story short, basically didn't come back. So all of a sudden we went from 4 kids to 3 kids to 6 kids overnight. And the government came to our house and said, we're going to take these children. And we said, where are they going to go? And well, there's no one to take them. Nobody wants 3 kids. And they're going to sleep in our office until we figure this out, and they'll probably all get split up. No, that's not going to happen. We're going to keep them. And so in America, there's a foster care system, and you have to become approved, and there's licensing, there's things. But she said, since they're already in your placement, they're already in your home, we'll call it kinship placement, meaning we'll treat them like their family. All of a sudden, we had to buy diapers again. We had to get cribs, because there's twins. And we had to get all the things. And we had these beautiful children for 2 years. Would have loved to have adopted them, but the mom figured her life out and got the kids back after 2 years. Which we feel great about, and wonderful for her, wonderful for the children. And in other ways, it hurts. Like, it hurts more than the death of a child because we don't know where they are. They're alive. Are they hurt? Are they okay? How will they grow up? Very difficult situation. But I share this with you because when you set up your life in a way that you're constantly just being open to let something fill in, you're being open to inventing yourself, you're being open to serving others, God has way more cool things planned for you than you can imagine. Okay? And what did you learn from an experience like this? It was extremely hard. I'll tell you how hard it was. When they left us, we decided we were going to go on a trip, a road trip from New York, and just one-way tickets and see what happened. So we flew to New York, but on the way to the airport, my wife lost her memory. She couldn't talk. She couldn't spell the English alphabet. She couldn't remember my name. We think it was a stroke, but we're not sure. And she got her memory back, and I said, we're not going to go on this trip. Like, we're going to go home. And she said, no, I am not that kind of person. I am not going to go home, lay in my bed, and regret my life. And she was brave. She was going to get on the airplane first because she was going to go to a conference, and then me and my boys were going to follow. So I gave her a little card. She's getting on the airplane by herself after she has this experience. I can't stop her. And I gave her a little note that says, if I forget my name or if I call this number, and then I realized she's going to forget to give people the card. Okay. So bad. And she makes it. Her friends pick her up. And we ended up being on the road for over 6 months, zigzagging across the United States. So we just had to huddle up and be a family. Every dime we made on the road from our cell phones, because it's the 21st century. Does that make sense? And we went to Mexico. We went from New York to San Diego to Mexico and up the entire California coast, halfway across Canada, back down, and then flew back to Hawaii. Okay? I share this with you because every tragedy, every terrible thing that happens, you can either go into a hole and hide, which we do often, or you can try and make something better out of it. Every time, every entrepreneur, every person that's been rejected from a job, every person that's been rejected makes something better of themselves because of it, if they choose to. Does that make sense? Always choose to. So I brought her to China last November. And it was weird because we wanted to go to the Great Wall. I'd been there before, she hadn't, but Donald Trump was in town. He came to make the wall great again, he said. I don't know. I was worried telling that joke, like it'd be really offensive, so I'm glad that you laughed. I don't know what's going on. All right, so they closed the wall. They closed the freaking wall. We couldn't even go on it. So what we did is we told our driver, and he was like really scared for some reason. All right, just keep driving. And we could see the wall in the distance on the mountains. We drove like miles. I said, just keep driving closer to the wall, just see how close we can get so we can get a picture. Well, we ended up, he kept saying, oh, this is not good. It's good. I promise it's good. And we get to the place on the wall where we get out. It was an abandoned entrance to the wall. And the driver said, 100% of tourists have never been here. That's what he told me. I'm like, cool. And so like we ran along the wall and did our own thing all by ourselves. Thank you, Donald. And this is kind of silly, but what I learned is where there's a wall, there's a way. You may have heard that when there's a will, there's a way. Sometimes willpower doesn't actually work. Sometimes you have to, like my friend Benjamin Hardy, who wrote a book that was someone put up here. He says willpower doesn't work. Sometimes you have to change your environment. But where there is a wall, you know there's something on the other side. You know where to go if there's a wall. You just have to climb it. Okay? All right. So then we get back to Hawaii, and this is like terrible. I take my son to EFY, so now we're coming full circle when I met my wife at EFY. And my 14-year-old and my 11-year-old, he's 10 at the time, gets hit by a car in Hawaii. So I fly back immediately, and he should be dead. The car didn't see him. The car didn't slow down. The car didn't brake. I think it's going about 40 miles an hour. And he should be dead. And so we're in the hospital now for another 2 months or so, and things are crazy. And I started asking myself, you have to understand, when you have a string of tragedies happen over and over and over, you start to feel like God doesn't love you anymore. You start to wonder, like, why me? How could this happen? But I knew that wasn't true, because God loves us unconditionally. And I also knew I couldn't blame God, because I don't think God wanted my son to get hit by a car. I don't think he put them there in that path and made that car be there at that second. But as you know, many of us and religions all around the world, we blame our Father for almost everything. So what I learned in this instance, and I don't know why we don't talk about it more, I learned to love the same way God loves us unconditionally. I learned to love God unconditionally. What I've learned is when you love God unconditionally and stop blaming him for things, why did this happen? Why am I not doing this? You actually take responsibility back for your life. And not only do you love God more and have more faith in him, but it allows you the opportunity to take the things that are in your control and do something about them. Because if I say, God, why did you do this to my son? I hate you. Why do you hate me? Which is what most people do, and leave the church for it. A lot of people do that. If I do that, I actually let go of all of my control of my own life and say, it's God's fault. So yeah, someone shared that quote earlier today too, where you put all your faith in God, pray to God like it's all up to him, but work as if it all depends on you. As soon as I realized I could love God unconditionally, and that these string of tragedies weren't attached in any way, shape, or form, it's just the fall. It's just opposition in all things. Things just happen. As soon as I realized God's not bad trying to hurt us, and I love him no matter what, my entire life came more in focus where I can say, I'm going to do this no matter what. Does that make sense? Try it. I've told you a lot of terrible stories. When you look back at your own life, and I'm sure some of you experience things that are way worse than what I've experienced, instead of looking at them through the filter of, that is terrible, I can't believe that happened, I hate the people that did it to me, why doesn't God love me? Just stop all of that and say, God loves me unconditionally. Those people are idiots. They shouldn't have done that to me, but I'm going to take control back of my life. That's okay. You can still love idiots. You don't have to play with them. That's not what it said. It just said to love them. Okay? And so here he is back surfing again. Okay? What do you learn from an experience like that? Love God unconditionally. So let me end with how you can do this yourself. I studied lots of literature, over hundreds of years of literature, and I interviewed over 300 people one-on-one, and I asked them what made them successful or not. And I boiled it down, including, I'm not going to go into it now, but like just stories from so many great people, and I made it simple to remember. I call it START, which is serve, think, ask, receive, and trust. Whatever idea you have that you want to accomplish that you thought of today, you start with service. You serve someone, and you don't do it with like this weird, you have to give it back to me kind of thing. In fact, it's the opposite. You serve them, and you're grateful for the opportunity to serve them, and you thank them. This actually creates the opportunity for you to then earn the right to ask someone for help. Too often we go straight for the ask, and it actually hurts relationships deeply. So you earn the right to ask, and then when they give to you, you receive it openly and graciously, and then you trust the process. Serve, thank, ask, receive, and trust. When do you do that? This is what my next book's going to be on. It's called Today is My Everything. Time. Today is your day. Like, we could all die right now. Like, you don't know. Like, in fact, you can't even do anything 5 minutes from now because it's not 5 minutes from now. It's right now. Does that make sense? These ideas that are pressing on your mind, if you leave this conference and don't send an email, talk to someone, start something, commit to doing something, it will have been a wasted time. So do something about it, and your life will be better for it, even if you fail at it, because then you can knock that off, cross it off the list, and do something else. So where my son is buried is really interesting. Right across from it, my brother-in-law, who also passed away and is there, he planted this tree. before he died, I mean, obviously. And so when we go back, it's really fun to go over to this tree and like see it grow and think of his legacy. But if he buried it when he was dead, that would have been really cool too, but that didn't happen. And so there was actually one time a little smaller tree kind of growing next to it. And I thought, that's my boy, okay? So when we do these projects, we start things, it creates a legacy for other people, sort of like planting a tree. And I say it all starts with a kiss because that's where my story starts, with my wife and getting married. And I don't know where your story starts or what you're trying to do, but I will tell you it's worth it. And I will tell you this. Remember we talked about earlier the difference between being transactional and being transformational? Every single one of you in this room, you have the ability to change people's lives, especially by changing your own life. But it's also not in the big things, it's the little things. You have a big picture goal, and you do the little things that work your way up there. Don't ever get distracted. Don't ever be sad that it's taking too long. Play the long game. Be patient. It's going to be okay. But patient doesn't mean you sit and wait. Patient means you're just like okay that it's taking longer than normal, but you're still working really hard, like a duck that's calm on the water, but going crazy with his legs underneath, okay? And so I challenge you guys to lean into stupid, and as you do, you will become smarter, you'll lead a happier life, and you won't regret it. And I thank you guys so much. Thank you.